Hello and welcome, everybody. We're going to go ahead and take a little bit of time and talk about the Chinese Lunar New Year right now. So, the Lunar New Year happens at a different time of the year than the calendar New Year that in the West that we're most familiar with at January 1st. So, there's a couple of different New Years we're talking about. We've also got people that will take the spring equinox as the sun moves into Aries as the time of the new year beginning. But the Chinese Lunar New Year, the calendar is based on what's called a solar or a lunisolar calendar basis. And so it's based on the moon's orbit around the earth as well as the moon's phases as well as the earth's orbit around the sun. And so for that reason the calendar varies from year to year, and so even the days of the year, the number changes from anywhere from 353 to 355 during a non-leap year to then having 13 months versus 12 months, and somewhere from 383 to 385 days during the lunar calendar on the leap years. And so that's just, of course, due to the variation of the orbit and the phases and how that works together. This year on January 29th, it's a Wednesday, just a few days from now, about 5 days from the recording here, we've got the new moon in Aquarius. So both sun and moon in the sign of Aquarius, and that marks the beginning of the Chinese Lunar New Year. And this year it's going from we were in the year of the wood dragon. This year we're going to stay in the element of wood and move into wood snake. The lucky color this year is said to be green, and the element of wood is said to be creative, imaginative. So it's the the element of the visionary. And so that gives us the playground for the snake to go about their business with. And so we've got the snake element. We can talk about how the snake represents things such as shedding its skin, growth and expansion, release and rejuvenation, also about wisdom, about a bit of hiding our motives in some ways. And so I've got a couple cards here prepared. I just wanted to share some of my thoughts about this. I did give a talk about this last weekend, and so I thought I'd just share it here on the channel while I can. So what else? Their calendar dates back to approximately 2637 BCE, and it's still widely used for agricultural purposes, festivals, and other religious purposes, but they still use the mainstream calendar for administrative purposes, and they use it commercially. So what else? Okay, so there are 12 animals that are the zodiac characteristics that change year to year. So instead of having a count of the years, their years move in a larger cycle. So each year is named by one of the animals, and this 12 animal cycle moves over and over again. And so the year of your birth, let's say you were born on the year of the rat, for instance, it's the first of the zodiac animals, then every 12 years from the year of your birth, then you have a return year where you're back in your zodiac animal characteristics. And so it's said to bring a lot more ease because things are really geared towards your more automatic type of characteristics and motivations and so forth. So it's in your natural energy. There's also 5 elements that are rotating with the animals. And so the way that that works, they repeat the element twice in a row, so the element switches only every other year, and so that brings a little bit more continuity from dragon into snake for this time frame, for instance. And because of the way that this rotates, the full cycle takes about 60 years to complete. So what else? They also recognize 24 solar terms, which I found interesting. It's kind of more like a half month, something like 15 degrees versus the 30 degrees in a zodiac based calendar, where it's based on the stars. Let's see, the specific sequence that the animals show up in. I'll just share the myth really fast here. It was said that the Jade Emperor, the ruler of heaven and earth, decided to create a calendar and a way to measure time. And so he decided to host a great race. And he invited all of the animals to participate in this race and promised that at the end of the race, he'd name one of the years after each one of the animals in the order that they finished the race. The only issue with this was that the animals would have to cross a very swift river to reach the finish line. So I hope you guys all know your zodiac animal. You might want to pause it and just check it out just so that you have a little frame of reference here. So, okay, the results. So as I said, Rat finished in first place, which seemed to be quite surprising based on the animals participating. But the way that he was able to finish first was because he tricked Ox into giving him a ride across the river. And Ox was very sure-footed, and so they made it across quite easily. And the only thing is that then Rat jumped out and finished the race in front of Ox. And so Rat got the first place finish. So here there's also a little bit of some variation in the different stories. In some versions, there was also a cat that was the sworn enemy already of Rat, and so in some versions Rat never even told Cat that there was a race, and so Cat wasn't able to show up. In some versions, Rat and Cat ended up both riding piggyback on the back of the ox across the line, or excuse me, across the river, and then midway, Rat pushed Cat into the swift river current. And so not only was Cat unable to finish the race, Cat was also never able to forgive Rat, and they remain mortal enemies to this day. And then in the widely held version, the cat didn't actually participate from what I understand. So, of course, second place, we have Ox, who was tricked by the rat, but very sure-footed nonetheless, and slow and steady wins the race was his MO. Third place, we have Tiger. Now, they didn't talk a lot about Tiger in the versions that I read, but of course, tigers are very swift, cunning, and he was able to get across to number 3. Rabbit was able to cross the river and was hopping from stone to stone until he slipped, fell into the current, and was able to jump on top of a log that was drifting down the river. And then after some time, the log did drift up to shore, and he was able to finish into 4th place. Dragon, surprisingly, was 5th place, and many anticipated Dragon would win because of his power and his strength and speed, and the fact that he could fly as well. But he pled his case to the Jade Emperor and said that he found it necessary to stop and help some villagers along the way. And then also, just about ready to finish the race, he sees Rabbit struggling in the strong currents and gave a huge burst of air to blow Rabbit on the driftwood up to the shore, helping Rabbit to finish in front of Dragon. But results are results, and it stood. So Dragon took 5th place, but it turns out that Dragon was a little bit altruistic here too. So then we have number 6, where we're at now, the transition from dragon into snake. So 6th place, snake finished 6th also in a surprising way. He hitchhiked a ride on the back of one of horse's hooves. And at the last possible moment, right before the finish line, he jumped off the hoof in front of horse, spooking horse, and was able to then cross the finish line in 6th place. And once horse recovered from being spooked, horse finished 7th. The next 3 are another interesting group. We have Rooster finding a raft and preparing to cross the river, and then Sheep and Monkey jumped on board, and the 3 of them were able to work together to paddle their raft through thick weeds and heavy, swift currents to cross the river. Now, Sheep finished 8th, Monkey 9th, and Rooster, who found the raft, finished 10th. I found that interesting, especially with the other ideas of cheating involved here. Number 11th, second to last, we have Dog admitting to the Jade Emperor that when he approached the river, it just looked too tempting and he had to jump in and play for a little while before crossing. And just as the race was about to finish, Pig squealed by and squeaked in for 12th place finish, admitting that the reason it took him so long is because he got hungry, he stopped for a snack, and ended up falling asleep for a nap along the way. So it's told in a bit of a funny, silly fashion, but this is a pretty integral myth and legend to Chinese culture. It's still widely believed to influence personality and your career and love prospects, as well as your future good or bad fortune. So, sticking with the current times, snake in the wood element, of course, is said to bring that creativity and imagination forward in our personality. And during snake years, all of us, to a lesser extent, are honorary snake element this year. So we're also exploring and developing our gifts, and we can become more idealistic and more visionary this year, lending itself to a lot of pre-planning. So let's talk about pairing the wood element with snake a little bit more. So it looks like we're going to be more willing to shed our old habits and also open ourselves up to new experiences this year. The combination of wise intuition and resilient growth supports both our professional and our personal development this year. Creative solutions will be easier to find and adopt, and this can be a really fertile time for any of those of us that are inclined towards art, music, creative enterprises, crafting, wordsmithing, and so on. Consistent efforts should yield results by this year's end. And in light of the fact that we're moving away from this helpful dragon archetype into the opportunistic snake, it may indicate a need for some of us to be willing and able to put ourselves first in some ways, big and small, this year. And we also may need to have our eyes open for opportunities as they present in real time. There's also this little suspicion that I have that some of us may get some of these opportunities presented to us when we are seen doing good things, or when we're seen in a positive light because of things that are automatic, not things that we could prepare for and present ourselves with some type of favorable light, but that they are things that we automatically do, and these are being witnessed and rewarded in the coming times. There are also short and long-term planning coming forward here, and it should help us with organization, quite obviously, and with our goal achievement. leading to greater stability for many of us. So, with goal achievement too, that planning, hopefully we can manage our expectations in this way, knowing that this year is a planning year. We can not put unrealistic front loading weight on ourselves, having to carry that around all year, like, oh, anytime now. It's like we will have many small gains. And many of us, depending on how we're aspected and how our fortune is starred, we may be having really good momentum in as far as accomplishments. But for many of us, it's going to be a time of putting things into order, making sure that we have a firm foundation in which to step off from, and making sure that we have things in alignment for the coming phase. With health and wellness, because it's related to shedding our own old skin for new growth and rejuvenation, and also because snake is associated with wisdom and the mind, I feel that this may be a time to focus on mental health, both collectively and in our own personal lives. And so prioritizing our self-care, more affirming choices in our lives, and making sure that we are committed to healthier habits going forward should really start to make us feel a lot better on the internal level. So also conquering challenges, especially with our personal relationships here and with our own self-concepts, we'll be seeing consistent improvements going forward. And all of this, again, this planning phase is in order to prepare us for the coming shift. And we're shifting not only element, but also zodiac characteristics of the zodiac animal, moving forward into 2026. And we're going into a double fire year. It will be fire horse, and horse naturally corresponds to the element of fire. And so when we have double fire, it's obviously a time of exponential passion, excitement, momentum, and drive. And the themes of transformation and personal growth are going to continue to be building. It's like this sense of emergence, having planned. Now there's this greater reveal where things start falling into place and really taking root after some slow beginnings. 2026 is going to be, as I said, much more action focused than planning oriented. And this year here of planning and getting ready for the coming exciting times is going to help us with building our own confidence, our sense of enthusiasm for what's to come, and also really helping us settle into that sense of personal know-how and capability and capacity to move forward. 2026 is also going to be marked by a more shrewd, business-minded focus. And I feel that many of us will be feeling that push now, where we're newly motivated to tackle things that we're not able to gain traction in the previous cycles, where now we're able to shed any type of, whether it ends up being self-sabotage or some type of when we're just spinning our wheels in a direction because it's really not where the alignment and the flow is able to gain traction. Some type of redirection and just really incremental shifts along our approaches can really lead to exponential results in the coming times again. So this is going to be hopefully leading any of you that are in the career end of things or any type of professional or reputation based enterprises or even friendships and connections here. We'll be exploring our leadership capabilities and qualities in the fire year next year in greater ways. So we're setting ourselves up now, again, preparing ourselves for the coming time where we're going to be ready to walk the path that we're preparing for now. So, okay, as we plan for this in this snake year, we're going to see those greater results in 2026 coming from the flexibility, research, inner growth, and inner development that we're doing here in the snake year. So I also want to do a bit of background about the larger 60-year cycles as I'm talking about this. So of course we talked about each animal is in sequence every 12 years, and then we've got the elements rotating through, creating that larger 60-year cycle. Right now, our current 60-year cycle began back on February 2nd of 1984. And to me, it seems like it was almost just yesterday, but also it seems like it was ages ago because I was so young personally. And this 60-year cycle doesn't end until January 29th of 2044. Oh my gosh, at 2044 on the timer. You got to be kidding me. I did not plan that. There would have been no way I could have, right? So interesting. And so from this time right now, we are just entering the 42nd of 60-year cycle, the 42nd year. And so from here till the end of the cycle, we've only got 19 years going forward. So obviously we're quite a significant way into the cycle. And many of us here being growth oriented, being synchronistically aware, we are looking at cycles upon cycles and how things culminate and develop and how things ebb and flow. And we can look at the old timelines and cycles to see what the common themes are, to gauge and intuit what the coming cycles are really asking for us in this growth and expansion, and how we are then able to connect and flow with the cycles with the collective. So in order, the elements go from wood, which is said to create fire. Fire then becomes earth. Earth produces metal, and metal controls and directs water, and water ends up growing new wood, completing the cycle. So as we're going into this right now, wood element, of course, giving way to fire. So we are creating a fire for the coming phase right now. And so as we look at the cycles that we're going to be calling forward, the time, we're going to look at 4 timelines here, time frames in chunks, and keep that in mind where we're at and what you think these themes are, whether you feel that they're coming back up for some type of interaction or not. So 1800 to 1862 is the furthest back that we're going to look at today. And if we think about this, they were about 40 years into the Industrial Revolution in the United States, at least during this time, and to an extent the entire world. Immigration into this country was at a huge all-time high as people flooded in, imagining all of the opportunities, all of the freedoms, and all of the space in order to expand. It was a time of dreaming and growth and hopes and creativity and vision. People were only exposed to newspapers and town criers and theater and some politicians to some extent, and local as far as their media coverage. They communicated through letters, and their transportation was horse and buggy at the beginning. And not until 4 years into the cycle in 1804 were trains developed. So the U.S. was in a continued separation from Great Britain, and they even were seeking the natives of the country to help them secure their country as it was in its infancy. And we did have the War of 1812, where Uncle Sam was brought forward as a personification of the U.S. and utilized a sense of duty and loyalty to recruit buy-in. 1863 to 1923, the last segment before most of us were born. And I characterize this one primarily not only social reform, which comes just a little bit later, but the separation between those holding more conservative, traditional views of don't shake it, you might break it, and those who were progressive and open and building and expanding. So the ones who wanted to be slow and steady and the ones who wanted to just jump in. So at the beginning of this cycle, 1868, we had the African American men gaining the constitutional right to vote, and not until the very end of the cycle in 1920 were women's votes constitutionally presented, and at first gained some traction. Women have been voting all of this time. However, many of you know that constitutional amendment was never ratified until Biden on the Friday before inauguration, which would have been the 18th of January, attempted to ratify it, but it was expired at that time. And it's a bit contentious whether that will stand. From 1860, just before the segment started, through 1919, Native Americans were subjected to boarding schools in an attempt to assimilate them to white culture, which was extremely egregious. World War I happened. People were also moving from farms to jobs and into schooling for longer and longer times. And with the boarding schools and the job school movement, it definitely seemed like that whole get a haircut, get a real job type of thing, where people were led in a cultural shift to see their future in a different way, that was to get money to buy the things that you need instead of being a producer of the things that you need in your own household. So it seemed like less direct, but it seemed to be a gaining some security. Mega grocery stores were beginning to replace farms. And so there was also a move from extended family to single family housing. And 1920, at the very end, 3 years, prohibition started here through 1933 and gave rise to mobs, gangs, speakeasies, bootlegging, and a huge shift in fashion with the flappers with their fancy short skirts and crazy styles. And here, mid-cycle, 1885 to 86, we had the vehicles being invented. And then largely by 1907, people were using cars more than horses. 1924 to 1983, when most of us were born. 1925, the number of cars finally outnumbered the number of horses. 1933, prohibition ended. And we have a lot of low vibe things coming through. We've got the Great Depression. We've got World War II. The atomic bomb was dropped. The Cold War, the space race, and overall huge social reform and extreme musical revolution as well. The hippie movement was brought forward, and the ideology of love, not war, and taking care of the environment and giving our attention to climate concerns and being more considerate in that way came forward. Women went to work in droves, changing the family unit yet again, raising the divorce rate, which gave rise to the latchkey children generation. TV began to overtake radio, and visual media took over with family, sitcoms, and reality TV. So we also had conspiracies stepping forward: JFK, Hoffa, UFOs, moon landing skepticism, and the rise of psychics in greater numbers. And the computers from 1945, the first computer that took up a room, to 77 when they were marketed in the 80s, they were front and center. Lastly, from 84 to this current year of 2025, we're calling this the technological revolution for obvious reasons. Single parents now most likely are outnumbering dual parent households, and tech has soared from its origins from desktop to laptop to handheld to internet, giving rise to fact checking, and then to algorithm media, smart media, AI, phones from dial to touchtone to cordless to cellular to mega handheld supercomputers, and the fall of the church with scandals giving rise to the evangelical Christian right and megachurches, resurrecting some authoritarian control. And world now also has access to instantaneous connections with people and resources and information across the world. Diversity, inclusion, and equity reform is on the all-time high. Middle Eastern wars continue, but there's also been the fall of apartheid, the fall of the Berlin Wall. The school shooters are here, but DNA analysis and ancestry gives us more insight there. Disclosure finally happened. I can't believe it. The rise of healers, influencers, and entrepreneurial spirit has really unlocked our destiny, bringing us a full cycle back to coming back to our roots. The tiny house movement, for instance, and communal living, intentional living. There has been the rise of fake news and kids programming, reality and TV, TikTok, raising our kids. But you take the good with the bad. So what can we imagine is going forward with the themes that we've got there? How are we looking forward to closing out our next 19 years as a people and personally? And what unforeseen magic and inventions will emerge? We can only imagine, right? So here's to all the magic and mischief ready to unfold in front of us. And we'll get our popcorn and stay tuned for that. So take care of you guys. Have a fantastic year of the wood snake, and check back for the daily dharmas. And until next time, we'll see you later. Bye.